before we get started, Karen, was there any, no, you just did it. Was there anything you wanted to do as far as just any guidance to participants as far as for today's RAC meeting? Or anything else you want to share?
No, just that we are recording the meeting, and it's more of a benefit for us as we go back through and try to confirm what we heard and such. So I do have the materials, the meeting materials posted up on our website, our rulemaking website under this topic. And then ultimately the recording will show up there as well. So that's all I have.
Great, thanks, Karen. I appreciate that. Well, I'm gonna double check and make sure I have everything lined up on my end here, because there'll probably be just different periods of time here. I'll be sharing my screen with folks. If folks are new to this process here, and I'm not sure if most of the names I'm seeing here have participated in one or more of the RACs I've participated in, but just kind of a real quick overview before we jump into the agenda materials. So this is an open forum as far as it's not just me driving the show. We very much want to receive input and feedback from those participating in the RAC today. I know with Teams or any online environment, it can be a little difficult if multiple people start talking. If you do have a comment or would like to share, I do ask that you use the raise hand feature with Teams, or you can also send questions and comments into the chat log. Both Karen and I will be monitoring that as well if you feel more comfortable doing that. Just other kind of general rules of the road I'd like to get out there too, as far as with the Rulemaking Advisory Committee, this is, as I mentioned, an opportunity for staff with the Division of Financial Regulation to get input from folks outside the walls, as it were, of our agency. With rulemakings, we recognize, and the state recognizes, that it can have a broad and deep impact beyond just what we can see here as regulators. So we do very much want to get this input from folks that this may affect, or will have a voice and would like to have a voice in any form of rulemaking. So that's kind of how we get to participating in a RAC and holding these RACs. That's kind of what it's intended for. Might be just a good way to segue into our introductions. I can lead off with DFR and staff here. My name is Brian Feldheim. I'm a senior policy advisor here at DFR. Work on several different topics, but most pertinent for today is I do help our life team as far as with policy issues. And so I've been tapped to help with this rulemaking around the opt-out from some of the compact uniform standards. So I think with that, I'll just go ahead and hand it off to a member of staff here first. Not to pick on you, Karen, but since you're top of the list here, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself, please.
No worries. Karen Winkle, and I'm the rules coordinator for the division, and I will be helping facilitate filing for this rulemaking.
Great. Thanks, Karen.
Yep.
And then from the life team, we'll go ahead and kind of start at the top of the team there. Tasha, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself.
Hello, everybody. My name is Tasha Sizemore. I am the Life and Health Product Regulation Manager. Nice to meet you all. And I'll pass it on to Josh, because I know he's on.
Hello, my name is Joshua Blakey, and I am a Rates and Forms Analyst on the Life team. Thank you.
Lauren, I think you're on.
Good morning. I'm Lauren Bodine. I am a Rates and Life team as well.
Glinda.
Good morning. My name is Glenda Villamar, and I'm a Life and Annuities Rates and Forms Reviewer.
That's all of us. Brian.
Great. Thanks, Tasha. Yeah, I was just checking to make sure no one got left out of the loop, and that looks like it's everyone from your team. So we'll go ahead and transition now to folks joining us from outside the agency. And in no apparent order, just as who I can see here, who hasn't gone. John Mangan, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself, please.
Sure. Thank you, Brian. John Mangan, Vice President and Deputy for State Relations at the American Council of Life Insurers. And our members are the major providers of annuities in Oregon.
Great. Thanks, John. Appreciate that. And Kim, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself, please.
You bet. Thank you, Brian. My name is Kim O'Brien. I'm the CEO of FAC, the Federation of Americans for Consumer Choice. And most of our members are IMO, BGAs, and agents who sell in your fine state of Oregon.
Thank you, Kim. Appreciate that. Let's see here. I'm just going to the next page here. And Angela, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself, please.
Hi, good morning. I'm Angela Donnelly, she, her pronouns. I am with Oregon Consumer Justice.
Welcome. Thank you. And let's see. Pramila, it looks like you've joined us.
Hi, good morning. Pramila Reddy with Oregon Department of Justice, Counsel for Division of Financial Regulation.
Great. Thanks, Pramila. All right. And I'm just, and then Bianca.
Yes, hi, Bianca Weiss. I'm with the National Association of Insurance and Financial Advisors, and we represent insurance agents and financial planners all over the country, and we have an Oregon chapter.
Great. Thanks, Bianca. Welcome. All right, I'm just going to double check my list here, make sure I did not leave anyone off the list. I don't see anyone. If by some chance, if I have not said your name this morning, you're participating, if you wouldn't mind just going and introduce yourself here.
Hey there, can you guys hear me?
Yes, I can.
Oh, hi, I'm Desiree Lee, and I work for the Division of Financial Regulation. Excuse me, I can't talk. And I am a market analyst. So, hello, nice to meet everyone.
Good morning, Desiree. Thanks for doing that. Sorry if I missed you earlier. That was my bad.
That's okay.
All right. So it looks like that's everyone I'm showing is participating.
We have one more.
Go ahead.
James.
Hi, I'm James McDowell. I work for the Standard out of Portland, Oregon. I'm in the legal department. First time caller, long time listener.
Thanks, James. My apologies. I saw you there for a second and I lost you on my list and then saw you again. So thank you for setting me straight.
That's all right. Ryan forwarded it to me, so I wasn't on your original list either. So thank you for having me.
Of course. All righty. So what I'll go ahead and do here, if it's easiest for folks, I know Karen had the agenda up there for just a minute, but I'll go ahead and share my screen here as well, just to kind of have the agenda front and center for folks, if that's all right. But I won't leave it up for ever. We'll just kind of use this to kind of steer things along a little bit, but I also like to try to leave a little bit of room on my screen so I can kind of get the sense that I'm actually seeing folks. So just to kind of lay out why we're all here this morning. So this is Oregon's first time ever electing to opt out from any of the compact's uniform standards. There's 2 uniform standards that we're actually moving forward with rulemaking. That's what we're discussing here today to formalize DFR's opt-out from these uniform standards. So, and first off, can everyone see the shared agenda? Is that up and visible to folks?
It is.
Yes. You bet.
Heads. Okay, great. It's always wonderful when the technology is doing what we want it to do when we want to do it. So listed on the screen here are the 2 uniform standards that Oregon is moving forward to opt out from. The first is the standards for individual deferred index-linked variable annuity contracts, sometimes referred to as registered index-linked annuity contracts, or RILAs. The second was an amendment to additional standards for market value adjustment feature for modified guaranteed annuities and index-linked variable annuities, or again, RILAs there as well. So just a little bit of background as far as why we're here and why we're choosing to elect to opt out. Part of the meeting materials that we sent out were a couple of letters. One was a comment letter that we sent to members of the compact. And sorry, my screen is being a little slow here. I may have to stop sharing for 1 second so I can get to where I need to go, and I'll share here again in just 1 second.
Do you want me to do the sharing?
Brian? I think, no, that's all right, Karen. I've got it all queued up here it was just for whatever reason I couldn't get that little bar showing that we were recording to drop off, so we'll try this again. And if I may just periodically have to drop out of sharing and switch gears and come back up. So, but as I was mentioning, we participated during the compact's development of these uniform standards and the amendments. And we had voiced some concerns during that time frame as far as some of the features around these uniform standards So I won't read it verbatim because I think it's a few pages long, but I do have sharing on the screen a copy of the letter that we sent to the compact outlining DFR's concerns. So ultimately, as far as after the comment period passed and these uniform standard review time period passed, the compact did elect to adopt the uniform standards. And the feature that we were most concerned with as far as on these uniform standards and why we're electing to opt out. So for the, sorry, my screen just froze on me again. So I will, hey, Karen, would you mind going ahead and sharing? I'm sorry, my setup here is not liking this.
No worries.
Great, thank you.
Okay, so we're on the letter.
Yes, we're on the letter. It was dated March 26, 2024.
Okay. All right.
And sorry, that's my fault as far as, of course, I said the technology is working where and how we want to, and that I just tested the universe's patience with doing that. So as I mentioned, I'm not going to read the letter here. I think it did a fairly decent job kind of outlining and encapsulating Oregon's concerns with these uniform standards. For the new standard for the indexed deferred link, and the index deferred, wow, I have that tongue-tied, individual deferred index linked variable annuity contracts. This was a new uniform standard that the compact developed. Around this standard, some of the concerns that we had to do with product design. So there was some concerns on the features that these products could be designed in such a way that they would function for all intents and purposes like a fixed annuity, but still be a variable contract. And because it would be a variable contract, it would not be subject to the non-forfeiture and minimum crediting requirements that we have a statute for here in Oregon. I believe one of the pieces is that it was making mention of adhering to one of the NAIC model laws. I believe it was number 805. And around that, as far as, again, by only making reference to that and not making reference to state non-forfeiture laws, we did not see a way around this uniform standard not outright clashing with Oregon law. So that was the primary concern and objection we had to that uniform standard. And then for the amended additional standards for the market value adjustment for the modified guarantee annuities and index linked variable annuities. This was more, I guess, technical in nature, but still valid. So when this uniform standard was amended by the compact, whereas before they'd had fairly clear, bright line language talking about the supremacy of state law and state non-forfeiture requirements, the amended language for the MVA uniform standard was very kind of oblique. It's still technically got there, but you had to do a very long run through multiple uniform standards to kind of get to the impression that non-forfeiture and minimum non-forfeiture laws for the states is prevailing or predominant. So on this front, we never got comfortable with the language. We didn't feel that there was a clear, bright line really showing the primacy of state non-forfeiture laws. So we are moving ahead with the opt-out for this. Now, just a small caveat with this, DFR staff has been in touch with the executive director for the compact. We've defined our concerns around the MVA piece and the non-forfeiture piece. And there was conversations that the compact may work to clarify that language in that amended uniform standard. We had actually given them quite a while before we worked to form the RAC and start moving forward with this rulemaking process, just to see if they're going to have time to make those clarifying changes. To date, I'm not aware that any new language has been proposed or moving forward on the compact side. So at this point, we are going to continue to move forward with the process to opt out from this MVA component. Now, that said, as far as if the compact does clarify language and address our concerns, Oregon would be open to foregoing opting out of that uniform standard. So I think I have summarized, hopefully fairly clearly, where we're at as far as why we're moving forward with this rulemaking. I'll pause here now real quick. Tasha or Joshua or Glenn or anyone on the live team, was there anything else you wanted to comment or share that would just give participants here kind of a good understanding of kind of why we're doing the opt-out? And if there's anything I missed or misstated, now would be a great time to set me straight.
Josh, I know that you're really keyed into this, so do you want to start? If there is anything.
Hi, thank you. Yeah, this is Joshua Blakey with Oregon. I think one of the big concerns with things like 100% buffer, or a buffer that essentially eliminates the, any potential for the risk to the premium, or a 0% floor, is at that point your premium is guaranteed. There's an interim value calculation if the money is withdrawn early, but as we've heard from industry, that's not the intended use of the product. So it's kind of similar to surrender charges, where if you take your money out early, there's a penalty, and fixed accounts have surrender charges. So just because these have that interim value doesn't make them inherently variable, and putting in those crediting strategy factors that negate the risk to premium kind of makes them more in line, or makes them fixed strategies kind of by definition. So that's kind of where we're coming from for that. Thank you.
Glenda or anybody else from DFR before I weigh in? Okay, being as nobody else has spoke up, I will just say I think Josh covered it really well with the floor and buffer, and how some insurers are having those features of the product operate. And so a lot of our objections, in addition to things around like the entire contract provision and making sure that insurers have SEC approved documentation, is really to suss out the actual benefits and how the product works, because we're finding that the buffer and floor features, if at 100%, like Josh mentioned, do not allow the product to function as a fixed product. So yeah, that is.
All right, thanks, Tasha. I appreciate that. One other thing I did want to share too with folks here, as far as if at any point, as far as we're moving through the agenda, if anyone has questions or would like to comment, please feel free to again use the raise hand feature. You can always send something to the chat as well, but sometimes it's a little difficult for me to see that. And great, John, go ahead.
Well, thanks, Brian. Yeah, I just had a couple questions. Obviously, these provisions of the compact are of great concern to Oregon, because you've never opted out of a standard before, right? So a couple questions, just for the record, I guess. Oregon is the only state that has opted out of these standards, correct?
To the best of my knowledge, yes, I believe that's correct.
Okay. I want to just explore one statement that was made about the fixed, your notion that because of the 100% and the zero floor, that these function as fixed annuities. And you mentioned that this clashes with Oregon law. Can you just give us a citation to that section of the law? I think the letter calls it, says that Oregon has a unique and better non-forfeiture rate available. Can you just point me to that, because I'm not finding it?
Josh, do you have that off the top of your head?
Yes, sorry for the delay. Thank you for the question. For our non-forfeiture statute, Oregon's non-forfeiture statute is ORS 743.293. And it's got a lot of language in it, but it boils down to, we require a minimum of 1% for non-forfeiture, as opposed to the NAIC's 0.15%. So that's where our non-forfeiture is stronger. And then the definition of variable life insurance and variable annuity is ORS 731.156. And part of the language in there is, one second, that vary according to the performance of a benchmark index, rate, or fund if the principal or minimum rate of interest is not guaranteed and might be subject to a market value adjustment. With these strategies, the principal is essentially guaranteed since the risk is negated through the buffer or floor.
I also wanted to say, this is Glenda, that the way these are filed, the indexed crediting strategies such as a 100% buffer or 0% floor come in as riders that attach to what looks like a typical variable annuity contract. And it's these specific riders that when they are presenting a 100% buffer or a 0% floor strategy, those riders are fixed, considered fixed strategies, interest crediting strategies under our variable annuity law, because it's not following the gains or losses of the index that it's supposed to be following. So it's not the whole variable annuity contract that we're calling fixed. It's that specific rider.
Just one quick follow-up, if I could, Brian. I know it's been, about a year and a quarter of filings that you've received. So have you received any filings that don't have the 100% buffer or don't have the 0% floor? In other words, that are above the 0% or below the 100%? And those, I assume, would be considered, under your definition, would be considered variable, right?
If they come in, yes. I actually had the opportunity to go through all of the filings that we had received, and as Glenda and Josh mentioned, often or usually these are attached to an approvable or a processable filing, and it's just this one portion that is holding it up. And what we found is it takes a lot of work with the insurers to have the insurer make changes to the buffer or the floor in those particular riders that have it make sense. Did I get all that right, Josh and Glenda?
Yes.
So those contracts would be able to be approved.
The contract would. However, these are coming in as an entire filing. So we cannot, without the insurer withdrawing the offending portion, we would not be able to approve it.
Thank you.
They could also keep that strategy rider if they apply non-forfeiture to that rider as a fixed strategy, but that's up to them to do.
Yeah, and I think, John, that's a really important point. We, a lot of this is objections on particular strategies. Once we get the kind of the foundational stuff like entire contract provisions and same-sex marriage taken care of, there are kind of substantial issues that the actuaries and the analysts are having to work through and having to get additional information from the insurers. That is all.
All right. John, thanks for the question. And Tasha and Glenda and Josh, thank you very much for the background on that. I appreciate it. Let's see here. I just want to make sure, and my apologies if I drop off here. It seems like my Teams is trying to update everything, even though I told it not to. So if I drop off here, I will be back as soon as possible. So we've actually kind of segued a little bit into the next part of the agenda here. So we've kind of given the background as far as where Oregon staff has seen some concerns and kind of the root of why we're moving forward to opt out from these uniform standards. But John kind of got the ball rolling with his questions. We're at kind of the general discussion phase now this morning. We're happy to take feedback from folks. If there's additional questions that we can answer or better illuminate kind of the where, how, why, what we're doing around this, we are more than happy to do that. And as clearly evidenced by Tasha and her team, we have a wealth of knowledge and experience on the call today to try to answer any questions you may have.
I do have a question, if I may. Kim O'Brien here.
Certainly. Go ahead, Kim.
And I'm new to this compact thing, so forgive my ignorance. But does this mean that carriers will not be able to file these types of products through the compact, and they'll have to do a separate filing with Oregon. Is that what this would result in?
Yes, that is what that means. And we are
Okay.
currently not accepting mix and match for these products either, just because oftentimes what is attempting to be mix and matched would violate portions of our law for these products.
Okay, thank you.
All right, great question. And again, Tasha and her team already mentioned this too. So what I don't want to do here is misconstrue. So we're not saying as Oregon that these products absolutely cannot be filed, but because the way the uniform standards work with the compact is it's basically a clearinghouse for filings for participating states, companies that want to file a product. Rather than filing in every jurisdiction that is part of the compact, they can send their filings to the compact, have the compact do basically a review for all participating states. And then if the compact approves the filing, that product or that filing is now available to the compacting states at large. So it's designed to kind of increase efficiency, reduce some of the costs as far as how many times filing fees have to be paid, and kind of is meant to speed along the ability to file and get products out into use. So, and Oregon is a member of the compact. And as John mentioned, this is our first time opting out of a uniform standard. Oregon's never done this before. But around this here, as far as even with the opt-out from the compact and these uniform standards, it does not preclude companies from still filing these with Oregon. It just means that we would need to do our own review and approval of the filing. And mostly, again, around, as we've been discussing, the strategies for the index-linked variable annuity contracts, as far as to make sure that it's not attempting to function like a fixed product, but circumventing our minimum non-forfeiture crediting requirements. And then again, also with that market value adjustment piece, as far as these are all still things that companies can file for Oregon review and potential approval or rejection. But at this point, because the compact and the language in their uniform standards is at odds with Oregon law, that's why we're opting out of the compact. So it's not saying this forecloses companies from filing their products with us for review. It just means that these can't go through the compact right now, as far as because of these this disconnect. And Tasha's probably going to save me from myself here. Tasha, go ahead.
I was just going to add, Brian, I think everything you're saying is right on. I was just going to add, kind of in response to something John asked earlier. Yes, I think we are the only state that is opting out of this particular standard. However, there have been other states here and there that have been singletons that have been the only state to opt out of a particular standard. So it's not unusual for there to only be one state. Usually that's, in my experience in the last couple of years, when a state does opt out, there's only one or two states, usually one, that have legislative mandates in that our legislature has passed and found important for our jurisdiction. So I just wanted to clarify that it is not unusual that we would be the only state to opt out of a compact standard. This is just our first time doing it.
Great. Thanks, Tasha, for the elaboration. And that does remind me, and I believe Josh covered this already, but I do want to bring it back because it's an important point. So the primary concern we have is Oregon has a very generous non-forfeiture crediting requirement. As he mentioned, I think most follow like the NAIC guidance, which is a fraction of a percent as a minimum crediting for non-forfeiture requirement. And Oregon as a baseline has 1%. So I forget if it's like 10-fold or 100-fold greater than what most other jurisdictions or even the NAIC uses. And so that's from our perspective and from a consumer protection standpoint, that's a pretty big gulf between the two. So that's a big piece of why we're opting out of this component for the index-linked variable annuities, as far as just how those products are designed. Anything that is approximating or emulating a fixed product needs to be mindful or address that minimum, the non-forfeiture minimum crediting requirements that we have here in Oregon, and we are unique in that. I think one other state, it might be Minnesota, has a crediting rate that's above what the NAIC model is, but that's very top of the mind here, and I'm probably wrong on the state, but I do think there's one other state that has a similar crediting rate, but to my knowledge, they've not opted out. So hopefully I didn't make a total hash of that there. I'm just checking the chat here real quick to see if there's anything that's been added. I don't want to let anything hang out there for too long, but I don't see anything there. Okay. So was there any other, oh, I see John, go ahead.
Oh, thanks, Brian. Just a couple things. So yeah, I do think Oregon is first time obviously opting out, which is a serious thing. And there are states that have opted out, you know, on a single basis, like from long-term care, for instance. But even in those states, long-term care is still allowed to be approved as a product. The state has just decided not to use the compact standard. So to build on Kim's question, under this withdrawal, companies really won't be filing a RILA product or be able to use a compact file product in Oregon. They'll have to file separately. And the problem is Oregon is not really approving RILAs or any version of RILAs. So we're kind of in a feedback loop where you can't use the compact, and the state you've decided essentially these are fixed products, so we won't approve them. And so we're right now, at least, in essentially a place where you're just not allowing the product. I know in some of your material, you say that the compact standards were not adequate for your consumer protections, but I guess I'm wondering, is there a standard for what would be adequate? Because we have companies that are in the queue that are waiting, that haven't been totally disapproved, but they're just waiting. So is there a roadmap for what would be adequate? Because we know the companies have filed things other than a 0 and other than 100%, and they're still not approved. So that's just a question maybe for the future. Not much you can do with this rulemaking on that, probably.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll take that question, Brian, if you don't mind.
Oh, go for it.
That's a great question, John. I think one of the things that we have found, and one of the things that the actuaries have been struggling with, is that there's a little bit of gamesmanship, is what I'll call it, by the insurers, where the insurers will say, oh, well, you don't want 100% buffer. What happens if I do a 99% buffer? Is that okay? And we are really, we as a regulator have to hold all insurers to the same standard. And so what our actuaries have done is they took 3 similarly situated companies that were in the queue at the time they started their review, and did a concurrent review of 3 companies to sort of bring 3 companies to what would be considered the same place and see where each of those companies put their buffer or floor. This is something that sometimes we do in other lines, like major medical is a really good example, when there's a range of rates that an insurer could use that would put them into a situation of compliance, but we have to get them within that range. We know that 99% it would still be considered a fixed strategy from the actuarial standpoint. And we have found, based on the information that the first few companies have given us, that there's this sort of this 5-year like cutoff mark that if, and I might get this backwards, so Josh, help me. If a product is less, is anticipated to be less than 5 years in its term, then the strategy of a low or a low floor, a 0% floor or 100% buffer doesn't work. We also, or 99%, sorry, but we don't want to approve one at 99% for Acme Insurance Company and then a couple weeks later have Roadrunner Insurance Company come back to us with similar information but a slightly different buffer. And so we have been working across those few companies, and I know that Drew started working with another company just to bring in some additional information. However, John, I mean, I think that there's 2 points that we're really trying to work with here. So we have the consumer angle, which frankly, the folks on the phone, Josh, Glinda, Des, and Lauren are very, very concerned about. And then from the actuary angle, which is frankly what the actuaries worry about, in addition to the consumer angle, is is the path that we are taking with a particular filing acceptable? And John, I know it feels a lot like, hey, we're not approving stuff. We are very, very close to approving 3. My actuary lost his father very unexpectedly and had to be out though. So I am literally in a separate chat as we're talking today, seeing if those products can get across the finish line for the first couple. However, we do have the obligation as a state agency to also protect the business environment. So if we approve inconsistent buffers, we are setting some insurers up for a different story than other insurers. So I just would like to highlight that, you know, you're saying we're not approving anything, but in some cases we are sending 18 rounds of objections over the course of a year to get to this point. So it's not so much that we're not approving stuff, it's just getting a lot of information from carriers for us to, you know, feel comfortable that we're not setting 2 carriers up for a very different experience in our market. And I'm sure that smaller carriers and larger carriers can both appreciate the division taking that stance to make sure that we're not, you know, hurting companies of different sizes.
Great. Thanks, Tasha. And John, that was an excellent question. Thanks for bringing it up. And one other thing I would mention too, as far as beyond even just what Oregon's doing for approval for filings here in the state. So we had a lot of bilateral discussions with other actuaries from other jurisdictions as part of the compact as they were developing those uniform standards and working to amend them. I believe we were working with some actuaries from the Utah regulator and one of the states back east. I forget which. I want to say it was Wisconsin or Michigan, somewhere in that area. And in these discussions, you know, we were sharing, you know, what our concerns were. We were getting feedback from other jurisdictions. So not only were we doing these reviews and doing this research and analysis in-house, but we were discussing with other members of the compact as far as regulators and their actuarial staff as well. I can say from firsthand experience that some of the debates were lively as far as around the interpretations and some of the stances being taken. So one of the conclusions I came away with, and I'm by far and away not an actuary, I don't even pretend to be one. Actuaries, not unlike lawyers, will all have a slightly different stance on the same set of facts or data. So really with this process and what Tasha's team is doing is we're not trying to find just the one-off approval. The team is really developing an architecture for as any product is filed and reviewed. What is the kind of the best way forward for the review to be uniform as a process and to be fair to all comers? And John, you're absolutely right. As far as out of the last long legislative session and the passage of Senate Bill 536, prior to that, RILAs were not definitively included as far as an allowed product here in Oregon. So with the passage of that and one of the caveat pieces of the language in that bill that we have to at least consider RILAs, is we had to, as a regulatory agency, we had to make sure we got familiar and knowledgeable enough on these products to make sure that we were being a sound, fair, and judicious regulator. So that's also been a little bit part of the timeline as far as getting this review process fully squared away. But I do take your points, and I do appreciate the conversation and asking these questions. This is honestly the feedback that we look for as we do these racks, and it's these points of view that still help inform our decisions as we're doing the rulemaking. And John, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you so much for that, Brian. I really appreciated Tasha's comment about fair treatment of all insurers. And that's why I raised the question, because without some kind of standard, without some kind of guideline for 99 is not okay, 98 still not okay, 97 might be okay, or whatever it is, right? And the different year terms and that sort of thing. Whatever that decision is, we'd like to, have some clarity on what it is, because if one company is approved, like you said, based on all these objections and things that are coming in, that whole experience is going to be different than company number 2 that had a whole different set of objections. We need some kind of clarity, I think, in order for there to be a roadmap to fair approval. Right. And if one company gets approved and the others are out of the market, that would be not a good result for competition, for consumer access, for any of those things. And of course, the reason we keep being difficult, or the reason we keep raising these questions, is that this product is the most popular product right now in the United States. We're having a retirement, tsunami, basically, people who need these products more than ever every day in Oregon. And so that's why we keep raising our concerns and would like to have a roadmap to approval at some point. Thank you.
And John, this is at the point that I would say 98% is still not okay. We're looking probably, and this is not to be taken as guidance for any of the insurers, because this is going to be very, very, very much based on what the insurers give us. We don't have the underlying actuarial context for each insurer until we look at it. But, the buffers are going to have to come down below 50% most likely. We may be able to approve some over that. I'm talking to the actuary about one potentially today, but it really is, we have to get out of the 90s, have to get out of the 80s for these to be truly variable products. And a lot of times it's hard for the insurers to want to move those away from what essentially makes them a fixed strategy. So I echo everything you're saying, and that is what the actuaries are trying to aim for. We have also pulled a second actuary into this conversation to be a sounding board for Drew, to kind of make sure that the range that we're coming up with is right and supportable. But I absolutely agree, John, that if these products are popular, which we don't get calls requesting these products, we usually get calls requesting information or, issues from a consumer point that didn't understand these products. And that's why we're going to such great lengths to object to things like the training materials, the notices and disclosures, and then the end buffer, so that the product looks like what people believed that they purchased. So those are that is, I know it seems like it's taking long, and John, you can harass me anytime you want. I love getting harassed by you. So please reach out. And I can give you the update. And then just for everybody on the phone who is not aware, we do have SURF filing access. That information is public on our website, and you can go in and look at every insurer filing that is not marked confidential through SURF filing access to see where they are at in their review cycle and what kind of objections they're getting. And that is something that my health carriers absolutely love to use. And I would recommend that for insurers who really want to see what Oregon's kind of thinking about while we try to figure out what that strategy is going to be. Josh, I'm going to turn it over to you because your hand just went back up and I saw it up earlier.
Hi, thank you. I just wanted to point out, and I really appreciated John's comment about finding kind of a guideline that we can give insurers. I mean, as a reviewer, at the end of the day, I just want to be able to tell people, what Oregon's law is, what our rules are, and how to make your product compliant so that we can approve it and, make it available to consumers after we make sure it adheres to all those. And I think that's been one of the struggles, I guess, with these products is they're relatively new. We just started accepting filings, I think November 1st, 2023, or November 15th, 2023. And a lot of it, after getting through the forms part of it, which isn't a short order, but a lot of it gets to pending actuary in SURF. And a lot of that then is the back and forth and the resulting analysis, because we need to find out from insurers, okay, well, what do you think is reasonable? Where do you think, in terms of a buffer limit, where do you think a reasonable amount of risk is introduced? And then that comes back and our actuaries have to go through and look at those numbers again. And so a lot of that has been a bit of a back and forth, trying to find something where we can have a standard, where we can have a number that we can give people. And I think that's kind of where it seems like we all have the same goal, which is to get clear and consistent guidelines. And I think the pain point is the process in getting them, just because it has been a while, but it's been a while for a reason. And a lot of that reason is kind of analytical and data sharing. So I just want to point out that at the end of the day, it seems like we're all kind of, pointing in the same direction and we have the same goal, for what it's worth. Thank you.
Exactly. That's exactly what it sounds like.
Great. Thanks, Tasha. And thanks, Josh. And real quick, Josh or Glenda or Tasha or anyone on the team, just for everyone's participation and to make sure that kind of in fairness and transparency role of the RAC, would one of you mind just like a quick 60-second overview? We've used the term buffer and floor a lot around these products, but just in case anyone on the call is not as familiar with what these terms mean, could someone just run through that real quick as far as just kind of give a real brief definition of what that means? I just want to make sure that we have kind of fair play as far as everyone participating today.
Yeah, Josh or Glenda, somebody that's not me. I don't have an actuary on today, so.
I'd be happy to do that. So for these products, a buffer is the kind of loss that the insurer accepts before it hits the policyholder. So for example, if you have a 10% buffer and your index decreases by 20%, that first 10% of loss is essentially absorbed by the insurer, and then you only feel the rest of that loss going down to 20%, between 10 and 20. So the buffer is essentially kind of just what it sounds like. It insulates you from loss up to a certain point. A floor is similar in terms of limiting loss, but it's the lowest an interest rate will go. So if you have a floor of, let's say, negative 20%, and your index performs, it takes a hit and goes down maybe 30 points, negative 30, you only take 20 points of loss, negative 20%, because that's where the floor is. You will not be credited less than that, or you won't be dinged more than that. So floor of 5%, if the decrease is still 25%, you still only take 5% loss because that's your floor. A 0% floor essentially means that even no matter how poorly the index does, you don't take a loss as a result of market fluctuation. That's my understanding of both of those terms. Thank you.
Great, thanks, and I appreciate that. I know that came at you completely cold, so excellent. That was my understanding as well. So hopefully that means consensus rules. But yes, as far as really as folks can see, as far as we've been kind of having the discussion here, I think Tasha really said it best. As far as we're not out necessarily to prohibit the final approval of something like a RILA filing, but because it is new to us, we want to make sure, and this is just from my perspective, kind of station identifier here. This is a me statement, not a DFR statement. Anytime something's new, if the regulator doesn't do a good job of really kind of making sure we understand the full depth and breadth of an issue, if we any regulator rushes to do some kind of like format or approval process without knowing what it is that we're looking at or reviewing, it really only sets up for a period of confusion, the chance for mistakes, and ultimately the potential for consumer or even business harm. So I know it can seem sometimes like a regulator is taking a long period of time to do a review, but and I think we've more than covered this, but it never hurts to really put it out there. Not only are we doing these reviews, but we're building the process of how to do the review so we can make it a repeatable process, a repeatable procedure, not unlike a scientific experiment, as far as not only do we want to get the outcome the one time, but we want to be able to duplicate and replicate that outcome each and every time thereafter. So in a lot of ways, as far as, and again, not an actuary, but in listening to some of the debates, really, as far as how different actuaries from different jurisdictions and different backgrounds have looked at some of these data sets. And as we've discussed, our concerns around some of the RILA designs and features. No two actuaries are the same. No two points of view are completely identical. So that is also kind of what we're working to establish as far as to make sure we have this fully mapped, not halfway, not most of the way, but really try to have this as fully mapped as possible. So as all these products and these filings do come in, that we are providing that equitable environment for these businesses to file a product and not giving any advantage to one versus another company. And then again, is just that gold standard as far as making sure that these products do no harm to the consumer and are transparent as far as in both the value and the features that they are offering to the public at large. So I hopefully repackaged all that was said there and did it fairly well and colloquially, but that really is the goal here. And really from my takeaway from what Tasha and her team's been discussing is we're getting pretty darn close. It sounds like as far as we get these first companies approved, we can look at that process and hopefully make it a replicable process and And I don't know if we can ever put it out there like, hey, if you do step A, B, C through Z, you'll get a product approved. But it should help our ability to I don't know if I would say speed up necessarily, but we won't be inventing the wheel as we're driving the car as we review these products going forward. All right. I want to make sure that I'm leaving enough time here based on our agenda, and I think we're in really good shape. Was there other topics that we wanted to address while we're in kind of the general discussion phase here? We've got plenty of time. Was there anyone else that wanted to ask questions or share their thoughts on this?
I forgot to raise my hand, sorry.
That's all right, Kim, go right ahead.
I did want to hear a little bit more on the MVA issue. We've heard a lot about the RILA issue, and I'm interested a little bit if we could cover the rationale and the department's thinking on that.
Certainly. And Karen, if you wouldn't mind, could you bring up the comment letter again, as far as we had a section around the MVA as well, and it's just kind of nice to have that as a starting point.
Yes. So we're on this one, correct? This comment letter?
Yeah, the one that was dated, I believe, March 26th.
Okay.
Yes.
But this paragraph in here?
I'm sorry, I can't see it on my screen. I'm not sure if you're sharing yours.
Oh, I'm not sharing. That's the problem.
Okay, good. It's not just a me thing.
Okay, here we are. Is this the paragraph that you want me at?
Yes, that will be great. So I'll kind of do the high level response, but I will then let Tasha and the experts weigh in on this. So Kim, to your question around the MBAs, so this uniform standard is not new. This was actually an amended standard. They were bringing some language up to date. I think it was mostly to make the inclusion for language around the index linked variable annuities, or as we've been referring to them as the RILAs, to my knowledge, are the one and the same. Unfortunately, as the compact amended the language for this uniform standard, they cut away from language that they had used previously. And that language in the old version of the standard explicitly stated the primacy of state non-forfeiture law or state laws at large. In the amended language now, because it's pointing to, I believe, some of the NAIC model law language, that language has been omitted now in the amended standard. So with that, as far as that's why we have the objection here as far as to the market value adjustment. It's not market value adjustments at large. That's not our concern. We know that is a feature amongst many different types of annuities. But because that amended language now omits or makes it much less clear of the primacy of state non-forfeiture law, is that's where our objection lies. And I kind of mentioned this earlier, but it doesn't hurt to circle back. Like I said, I've been in discussions with the executive director at the Compact. I believe there's been some other discussions from our exec team with the Compact around this as well. We have given the Compact an opportunity, this basically more or less this past year, since Senate Bill 536 was passed, to work on some language around that uniform standard, to just to make that bright line very clear that state law is primary, that we are not, and any other jurisdiction is not beholden to an NAIC model law or something of that nature. And so that's where our objection with the MVA piece lies. And there's still room as far as if the Compact works to revise or amended language such that it makes that state non-forfeiture piece primary or dominant. Really, I think a lot of Oregon's objection to that would fall away. But before I move further along that line, I see Glenda has her hand up. Glenda, go ahead and again save me from myself if I need saving.
I just wanted to let you know that I put the current language of what the MVA statement says now in the product standards in the chat so that people can see that it leaves out the state non-forfeiture law piece.
Great, thanks for doing that. I appreciate that. And Kim, go ahead. And Kim, if you're talking, you might be on mute.
I do that a lot, sorry. This seems significant for all the fixed annuities that do use MVAs and follow the state's laws on those MVAs. So my question is Oregon doing anything to communicate what they see as this deviation to other states? And because there's so, I forget how many compact states there are, but there's a quite significant amount.
So sure, Kim, I can start with that, and then I'm probably going to have to lean on Tasha's team a little bit. So I understand your concern because you're right. MBAs are used pretty much across the board for a wide variety of annuities. In this instance, this is for the particular uniform standard around the MGA product and ILVA products. So they have a uniform standard for those specifically. And so that's, to my knowledge, that's the only language that was amended. They were bringing it current to address RILAs and ILVAs and the minimum guaranteed annuities. So I think hopefully not making too much of a hash of this. There's not a broad concern around the use of MVAs at large. So like things like fixed guaranteed annuities and a range of other annuity products that an MVA is a common component. This uniform standard doesn't touch on those products. And with this too, as far as we have voiced our concern to the compact, as far as by way of this letter and then other forms of communication. So from our standpoint, this is affecting only a narrow range of products as far as, and it's I believe listed right here. Maybe not right here. It may actually be in our separate letter as far as in our opt-out letter. But it does address as far as our concerns around it, but it's only for this uniform standard. It's not all uniform standards. It's not all annuity products. It's just this narrow field.
Thank you. That was helpful.
I'm glad I could do it, and I didn't see a bunch of hands shooting up from Tasha's team, so that's always a good feeling. And again, I do want to reiterate around this piece here too, is Oregon is still very much has open lines of communication with members of the compact. If and when they do move to clarify or clean up some of this amended language, and they've given all indications that they're open to doing that. I know that they have a lot going on right now, so it's probably just not high on their priority list. But if and when they do clarify the primacy of state non-forfeiture law, Oregon can easily opt back into the standard. And I guess maybe a good anecdote here to share. One of the reasons why Oregon's undertaking this by way of rulemaking versus putting this before the legislature and doing this as a law is the rulemaking component gives us a great deal more flexibility with this, as far as the authority to opt out of the compact is enshrined in Oregon law. I think Josh actually had it in one of his citations earlier, as far as in the chat. But with that, as far as the authority or the mechanism to opt out of a uniform standard from the compact, we can accomplish that by rulemaking. So at some point down the road, if the compact does address our concerns and change the language around the MVA piece for RILAs, ILVAs, and MGAs, our ability to opt back in, as it were, will be just to unwind this rulemaking. So again, with the rulemaking as a mechanism, it gives us a great deal more flexibility to make that change if and when the compact revises that language. So I'm probably like overemphasizing that piece, but yeah, that's one of the reasons why we decided to go this route, and it gives us that ability to be responsive if the compact changes course. All right. Are there any other questions or other general topics that we wanted to discuss while we're here today around this upcoming rulemaking? I did send out, or I should say Karen sent out as part of the invitation materials, a list of the draft language. I think it would be a good idea if we spent just a few moments kind of going through it. This language from a rulemaking perspective is pretty straightforward. We are citing, as far as to our authority in ORS 732-820. This gives any member of the compacting states, as far as these provisions that are adopted to join the compact. Part of that is the opportunity, not the opportunity, the authority for compacting states to opt out of individual standards without having to opt out of the compact at large. So really the language in and of itself is it's pretty straightforward. We don't have to elaborate in the rule as far as the why we are finding, as far as that these contracts are not basically not up to snuff. That's not required under the compact bylaws. But one of the reasons I wanted to send out that comment letter to folks so they had a chance to look at it is that comment letter does really outline as far as our concerns. That's the why. The proposed rule language here is the how. So I don't know if there's much to discuss around this here, but I wanted to have it here and bring it up in case there was any language that folks were saying that was outright problematic. That would be good for us to know. So not that I would want to do like, wordsmithing by committee, because that's always arduous and no one wants to participate in that. What I would say is this, as far as if there is any concerns around the language, like if it's like a major concern, now would be a good venue to share that with all parties. But if there's anything around the language that's like very minor, or there might be concerns as far as like it's not stated quite correctly, that might be better served to send to us by way of written comments. And I was just looking at the agenda that I crafted the other day and sent to Karen to send out, and I realized that I made a typo in the next steps piece. So I don't want to jump ahead, but I also don't want to forget. So I'll go ahead and touch on it real quick. The deadline for written comments is not April 2nd, because clearly we've come and gone. I believe we determined that April 29th, close of business, is the correct date. So again, my apologies on that. I missed catching that. So it's not April 2nd. No time machine necessary for this. April 29th is will be the final date for written comment to be submitted. So again, sorry to jump ahead a little bit on the agenda, not trying to short circuit it, but I want to make sure I got that out there, because I had noted that earlier and I just didn't want to forget. And so really with this, as far as I'm not seeing anything else in the chat. I haven't seen a raised hand here for general discussion. I think are probably at the point now where we can move to public comment. And for folks who have not participated or only are new to the RAC process, public comment period is literally that. As far as if folks just want to get their voice on the record, if there is a concern that they feel has not been otherwise addressed during general discussion, this would be a good time now to do that. Just because of the relatively narrow list of participants here today, I know that we don't have any general members of the public at large that are participating, but that's not to say if there's anyone on the call here that has something that they just kind of want to get on the record, as it were, for today's RAC meeting, this would be a good window to do that. So I will stop talking here. The floor is open for anyone who wants to make comments on this proposed rulemaking. And again, I would just ask.
You cut out.
Went on mute, Brian.
Oh, I was so fast to do that. Sorry about that. So yeah, if anyone wants to make comments at this time, please feel free to do so. I just ask that you use the raise hand feature. All right. I don't see any comments in the chat. I don't see any hands raised here. So I think we're good to go ahead and move on to the kind of the last little bit here. And I kind of already cheated a little bit about that public comment date, but again, I want to make sure I did not forget that. So again, April 29th, 5 p.m. close of business. If there is any written comment that any members of the RAC would like to make around this rule development, please feel free to send that to my attention and CC Karen. That would be perfectly fine. Comments can be sent as far as email attachments. If you feel just sending it just as an email in and of itself, that is perfectly fine. If you're not sure on, on something, or if you have any concerns around kind of what next steps in the process are for rulemaking, Karen is our resident expert around rulemaking. I would certainly defer to her expertise around that. But if there are any questions at large, as far as if after we hop off the call today, you're like, oh man, I really wish I'd asked that, please feel free to reach out to Karen and I. We can always, by way of email, redirect to all members of the RAC to make sure that everyone is still included on this. Right now, it is not our intent to schedule another RAC meeting. The rule language itself, I think, is straightforward, and not hearing a lot of comments around the rule language today. It's not our intent right now to set another RAC meeting. Now, that said, as far as if we get lengthy or expansive comments, written comments, it's not to say that we can't do that at a later date, but right now we're not anticipating another meeting. I did see Karen come on camera. So Karen, if you want to weigh in on anything.
No, I mean, our intent is to have this rulemaking effective August 1st. So I work backwards. So we hope to have a rulemaking hearing in May. I was looking at my calendar. I think it'll be May 22nd. I'm just kind of double checking myself here. No, it'll be June 23rd. Sorry. So that's all I have.
Great, thanks, Karen. And just so folks know, as far as we'll still be in touch with folks as far as as we're putting stuff out. I like to do stuff just kind of as a courtesy as folks that have participated in the RAC process, just kind of letting them know where things are at, and kind of some dates as they approach. But again, to influence or to voice or to be included, I guess, as far as from a point of view standpoint on the rulemaking itself. The public comment period, as far as in the written comment period of April 29th, is the best way to do that. Much past that time frame, we're pretty far into the rulemaking process itself. It would be more difficult, not to say impossible, but more difficult to make any kind of late breaking change. So if there's any comment or anything else that wants to be shared as and made part of the record, I would encourage folks to do so in writing on or before April 29th. So I think we're ready to wrap things up a little bit early here today. Before I sign off, I just want to do one last station call. Is there any other comments, any other information that needs to be shared? Anyone know any good jokes? I don't know. All right, seeing none, hearing none, I think we can go ahead and conclude today's meeting. Thank you all very much for your participation. I very much appreciate it.
Thank you, Brian.
I appreciate it.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you, Brian. You too, Karen.
Take care.
Bye now.